2 wins in a row and unbeaten in 3 with 2 clean sheets on the spin as well. Are we moving up in the world or is this a false dawn? Meanwhile, reputable reports from the BBC's Sammy Merkbell suggest the Lewis family are legit in their claims of wanting to spend to bring the best talent into the club. I'll be discussing the Slavia Prague game, those transfer rumours, and this weekend's Morgan Gibbs-White derby with George Nelson. George, how are you doing, mate?
I'm well. Winning is good. I like the habit. So yeah.
Winning is definitely good. We'll get into that. Just quickly, a word on my sponsor, okjersey.com. They sell the best current and retro shirts around at great prices, £15. And I have now 10 vintage Spurs shirts. So scan that QR code on the left of the page and also use the code BARN, that's BARN short for Barnaby, in the coupon box when you go to checkout to get 8% off. Also, if you want to join me for watch along for this weekend's Morgan Gibbs-White derby against Nottingham Forest, come and join me on BigUp. Details of how are in the description box below. But let's get started just with this breaking news that came out last night from Sammy Merkbell in the BBC, who I do actually respect. He's talking about, he did kind of a big read on Antoine Semenyo's next plans. Obviously, Spurs have been linked with Semenyo for a long time, but the vultures are circling Man City, Liverpool, also Manchester United interested. But in his piece, he suggested that if he were to choose Tottenham over those clubs, and it would be a big if, that maybe his financial package at Spurs would be larger, kind of claiming that maybe the Lewis family are going to be willing to push the boat out in terms of wages and signing on fee. What do you take from that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the direct competitors for this one, I think the biggest direct competitor has to be Manchester City. What's interesting about that is Savinho was a player that we were going for pretty hard in the last window, apparently.
Yeah.
Now, if there is to be the kind of cohesion that I'm looking for from this club, finally, we need to either pick that up again from where we left it, because although he signed a new contract, there's no real sense of him getting increased game time, yeah? So you either use this Semenyo deal or this Semenyo interest as a distraction to get Savinho, because they can't have both, or you outbid them for Semenyo on the fee, on the wages, the package. One way or another, we can't come out of that mess with neither player. Both players would be totally acceptable for me. They're very different players, but they both fulfill things that I think we lack in our team. And it's interesting that our direct competitor are very much entangled in all of that. Savinho is a guy I like loads. I think he's going to get better and better and better. His numbers don't quite reflect where he's at. His numbers in the eye test don't match.
So do you think it's a confidence thing with him? That's why he's getting very limited amounts of minutes, and when he does, he's trying too hard, kind of thing?
I think it's a lack of continuity. I don't see a lack of confidence. When he plays, he beats his man. He produces great things. He doesn't play in an inhibited way. He just doesn't have the opportunity to go back to back to back. He would normally put in a performance, which might result in an assist, say, and you're looking for the next game. The next game was usually somebody else. Remember last season, you had the likes of Grealish in the mix as well. They're just very fatty in the left and the right. He's the sort of guy who needs to be playing 34 out of 38 games a season.
Right.
I'd love for us to go for him if we cannot get Semenyo. Whichever one of the two we want, I hope we have a clear strategy in mind on how to acquire them. So one way of getting Savinho, like I said, is to go really hard for Semenyo in such a way that makes Man City spend more than they need to get him, and suddenly they need to balance their books. So we need to box clever here.
Okay, and then obviously the other team interested in him in Liverpool. Do you think the Mo Salah situation affects how hard they'll go for Semenyo?
Not enough, because Salah is clearly a right-sided player who likes cutting in. Semenyo is clearly a left-sided player who likes cutting. It's possible, but it's not that likely. I think Liverpool are loaded in all of those positions. Any way you look at it, with Salah, without Salah, they already have a problem balancing Ekitike's game time with Gakpo's game time, with trying to get Isak finally integrated into this team, trying to get Florian Wirtz playing in his best position. Liverpool, they need less, not more. They need to refine what they already have.
But what about the desperation factor? They're having such a terrible season and the fans are getting on their back. Is Arne Slot going to be like, get me something in the hope that it boosts something within the club?
I just think, you know, teams can struggle for numerous reasons, but the most common reasons for teams struggling is they haven't got enough resource or they've got too much resource. Liverpool brought in too many players at once, far too many for a team that had just won a title. It was all the hallmarks of a big rebuild of a team that needed an overhaul. Luis Diaz was still a good age. Yes, Darwin Núñez, you can upgrade there, but it just didn't require such a heavy hand. And I think it's about stopping for them, just stopping for a minute, couple of windows of minimal activity, let this lot get settled and work out who's who. We are in a good position with Semenyo. The only question really for me, and it is something worth discussing, is the whole he was an Arsenal supporter stuff. Not because of how the fans will necessarily perceive that. We have form with this. You know, I remember thinking Darren Bent was uniquely rubbish for Spurs, like rubbish on a level that there was nothing in his career before that to have suggested he'd be quite that bad.
Yeah.
You hear the way he speaks about Spurs on Talk Shite week in, week out, then you kind of feel, wow, we were hanging our hat on you. We were going into war with you. Jason Cundy's another great example.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah.
A guy who seems to relish digging into Spurs' misfortunes. Of course, we knew he had the Chelsea background before we bought him. We must have, you know, we knew that what we were getting into there. But his hate for Spurs is quite spectacular. And the fact that his only meaningful contribution for Spurs was the tackle from the halfway line against Ipswich that ended up in the top corner tells you all you need to know. So we do need to be careful about buying allies, buying people who are on our side. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can only really gauge that from an honest conversation with the guy. By all accounts, Eze, for all his love of Arsenal, was willing to go into that Spurs project with a lot of integrity, with a World Cup place on the line. I don't doubt that if we had completed that signing, he would have had his head in the game. If Semenyo's of the same ilk, get him in. If you get the feeling that he's, you know, feels like he's on some level doing us a favor, or it's his second or third option and it's proving to be a tough negotiation for those reasons, get out of it. There's more than enough talent out there.
Yeah, I agree. You're making some very common sense based points here. So I'm going to ask you to put yourself in Antoine Semenyo's shoes and look at this, take away the Arsenal factor and look at this as a purely kind of football based situation where, you know, you've had an amazing start to the season, then you've dropped off slightly. Maybe the chatter has got in your head a little bit, but you're looking at what the options are in terms of, of course, the potential for winning trophies now, you know, this season, etc. Maybe you look at Man City as the best chance for that. Liverpool secondary, Spurs obviously the third best. But then also in terms of your career build, you know, where will you go straight into the team? For me, that would be Tottenham. Now it's interesting. It's interesting, you know, that we don't know whether that will factor into his decision, whether he thinks he's ready to go straight into that City or Liverpool team. But I kind of doubt he is. How much of a factor do you think that will play? Or should play, maybe?
But like I said, if he's in any way kind of conflicted because of his love for Arsenal, then that's another factor. If that's just, this was my team growing up, everybody had a team growing up. I've played against them several times. I've scored against them. I've long gotten over that. Spurs is the decision for him. It's the perfect team for him. He's exactly what we need. It's the sort of formation he thrives in. Him and Kudus, like I say, there is that understanding from the national team. There is a kind of kinship there if you've seen them, and I've seen numerous situations where they've done, you know, video kind of podcast things. They're bantering each other. There's obviously a connection there.
Yeah.
London, the stadium. This is a guy who was at Bristol City a few years ago. Let's remember, Bristol City, Bournemouth, Spurs. That's my kind of trajectory, right? So he'll come to Spurs. It's all about the kind of package that we present in front of him, you know?
Let me add one more thing in that could be a difference maker. I think players down the years in the last, let's say 5-10 years especially, have seen that when you go to Spurs, it's very difficult to get out of Spurs. Like once you're in, it's very hard to get out because of how Daniel Levy would, insist on a lot of money back for selling. And in the end, they had to all get into the last year or 6 months of their contract before finally either, in Eriksen's case, say getting a deal or in Ndombele and a few others, Sessegnon's case, basically going on a free or whatever, or having their contracts terminated. Is there a possibility that Vinay Venkatesham can talk to Semenyo and be like, things are a bit different now. If you do as well at Tottenham as we expect you to in the next 3 years, then we're not going to stand in your way if a Real Madrid come in, if one of those proper, if Man City comes in there and you're guaranteed to get first team football. Is there a chance that maybe that could work on our favour as well?
I think so. And I think that these things are becoming more litigative, like it's in the contract, right? The days of Harry Kane's brother having chats, about what's possible if I have a 30-goal season and we don't win the league. Forget that. It's in the contract these days, usually in the form of a buyout clause. But if not, something in that ballpark. I think that's an easy one with Semenyo. You can put something like a 4-year deal initially with a really significant buyout clause within 2 years. If we're willing to go up to 70 million or so for him, I think the buyout clause for him now is 65, apparently.
65, yeah.
Let's say it's 65, 70. A realistic buyout clause for him within a year or two of him being in the Real Madrid conversation is 100 million. That's inflation should naturally take fees there anyway. You say 100 million buyout clause after your second season. I think we can all live with that. If you told me that Antoine Semenyo's performance would be at a level that Real Madrid would want him within 2 years of him being at Spurs, I'm taking that deal just for the success that it brings us before he has to leave. Yeah. This is dreamland for us to be talking about, him performing for us at a level where the biggest clubs in the world want to come in for him. We need to recognize where we are in the food chain as well.
Completely agree, and hopefully Mohamed Kudus is doing us a little job as well, telling him how good it is here and how good Thomas Frank is.
Recruitment is something that our players haven't. We don't have those personalities. I don't believe that Sarr is speaking to Njai and the national team and trying to get him to Spurs right now. I feel Romero might have the personality that if Nico Paz didn't have that deal at Real Madrid, could probably bully him into considering Spurs. But we need more recruitment. We need our big guns.
It wouldn't surprise me with Nico Paz. I'm glad you brought him up. It wouldn't surprise me if he's going to go to Real Madrid. I think maybe even as early as January. But it wouldn't surprise me if he goes there and he sits on the bench for a year or two, and then maybe Spurs after that could be an option for him, depending on where Maddison and Kulusevski are at that point.
And depending on what they do with Arda Güler. I think both of those guys are really, really similar and similar profile. If Nico Paz, I think he's better than Arda Güler, jumps the queue, Arda Güler is another good option. Another guy who's really fitting into that Ødegaard profile of they picked him up young, he doesn't get the minutes, they'll probably either have to sell him on or loan him out. Let's be at the front of the queue this time for that talent because he's plenty good enough to be a starting player in a good Premier League team.
Yeah, another player being talked about this week is Juventus's Kenan Yildiz, apparently firmly on the list of targets. And again, as part of this rumor, talking about how Spurs have a long list of targets, exciting targets, some more attainable than others. What do you think of this guy?
He's the best. Of all these young players, who we get linked with or don't get linked with, he has every single attribute I would want from a hybrid 10 player. He is incredible, that guy. And because Paratici is now back in the building, his very clear line of communication with that club, I don't rule that out, even though the profile of the player really right now is a little ahead of where we are as a club. He really should only be in top 4, top 5 clubs in the world conversation. But Paratici's done some impressive things with his Serie A connections. Romero's reputation at Atalanta off the back of that last year there was high. It was really high. We shouldn't really have been in that conversation. We jumped the queue, Kulusevski and Bentancur, maybe that was a little more logical because they weren't necessarily getting, in the case of Kulusevski, wasn't getting the minutes, and Bentancur was seen as a little disposable, but still, I was very impressed with the way he maneuvered that situation, so yeah.
And also, I saw Lily White Lab, Kish from Lily White Lab this morning talking in terms of the Semenyo, it might have been last night, the Semenyo deal, saying, he doesn't think he's the ideal signing right now because we need to concentrate on a more kind of progressive passing-based central midfielder and a left back. A left back we're being rumoured to be linked with this week is Frankfurt's Nathaniel Brown, alongside, of course, as ever, as I've spoken about, now in the data-driven days, everybody's after the same players. Man City, Arsenal, and Man United are also looking at him. 22 years old. I don't know much about him, to be honest, but I definitely am keen every time I hear that we're interested in a left back, especially now Udogie once again is injured.
Yeah, no, we definitely need a left back. The left back I had my eye on is also injured right now. I felt like after last season, I felt Robinson had a really good season.
Yeah.
And I like his qualities. I like his height and his strength, and that he's a legit, what I would call a two-way fullback. He can do that lockdown, Jet Spence stuff of you're not getting past me. And he's also an attacking threat. I think he was the top assist fullback last season. But Robinson's had a lot of injuries this year, which is why Sessegnon has been getting all those minutes at Fulham. He'd actually be the guy I'm looking at. I've been quite keen to get this across in all our recent conversations. I think our next 4 or 5 signings over the next 2-3 windows should really focus on Premier League experience. We did a great job at picking up a bunch of guys who actually adapted fairly quickly to the league in Vicario and Van der Ven and Romero and Kulusevski and Bentancur. This went on for a few seasons. I just think that next step, that final step, in line with what Liverpool did with their final step to becoming a league-winning team with the signings of Wijnaldum and Robinson and Van Dijk, needs to be Premier League guys who don't necessarily play for the top teams, but are doing impressive things for teams of mid to lower expectation. Bring in those guys, and that will tip us over the edge. Now, we don't need to directly sign them from those clubs, which is why Ruben Neves is interesting for me. He's proven himself in those situations and has now been, in the sort of footballing wilderness or whatever for 2 years or so in Saudi. He's brilliant. He would be a great fit for the position that you just talked about, the progressive, deeper line player. And I am also of that belief too, that the absolute priority needs to be that position. But the second biggest priority to me is the left side starter position. And the third priority is the left back. If we could do those 3, I don't think it's realistic to do all 3 in the next window, but if we can do all 3 by the end of the summer window, I feel really good going into next season.
So with that left back being your third kind of priority, how comfortable are you potentially with Ben Davies getting more minutes? Obviously, he came on against Slavia.
One of the big football mysteries for me is Spurs fans' lack of appreciation for Ben Davies. I get it if Udogie went down with an injury and so did Porro, which meant that Spence is a starting right back and suddenly Ben Davies has to play 2-3 games a week. That would be a problem. But Ben Davies is a guy who can come in and take on certain assignments. He's a more than serviceable left back. He knows the club. He can play different systems. He understands how to play as the third centre back in a 3. He can therefore appreciate the challenges of playing as a left back playing with a back 3 also. He's a decent defender without pace. He has a reasonable final ball conversion. He's not a bad crosser. He even had seasons where he was contributing as a goal scorer in set piece situations, if you remember, against Bournemouth and flashing headers at the near post. Ben Davies has never let us down. When we had that package deal with Sigurdsson and brought him in, he was very much seen
it was Michel Vorm, wasn't it? It was Michel
Vorm in there. And I remember the time feeling like, I like him a lot. He was young and I liked his style, but I thought he would develop as a much more attacking wing back. That's kind of how I saw him as a young player. He had to change his game over years, but I have very fond memories of Ben Davies's performances in our best seasons, in our 86-point season. Ben Davies was a completely reliable player.
I think he's kind of slightly hated by some of the Spurs fan base for the same reason that Scott McTominay was, Man United fans were happy to lose Scott McTominay. And also kind of the reason why I think Harry Kane isn't seen as undoubtedly the best number 9 in world football because they're just not they're not seen as sexy. Do you know what I mean? They're not like skills based. They're not blessed with incredible pace. They don't beat men on the outside. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's an element, I think, especially among, and no shade, but among kind of younger fans, where it's like if you're not good on FIFA, then you're not someone that I'm going to appreciate at my club.
It's true. It's true. The FIFA thing goes both ways as well, doesn't it? It also means that when you make certain signings, fans get way excited beyond what those guys have ever done in real life. I mean, I'm happy with how Xavi Simons is progressing in the last week or so, but that was definitely a FIFA reaction by the Spurs fans.
Well, an Instagram reaction from him being like an Instagram star from when he was about 10 years old as well.
Exactly. But you remember Scott Parker used to be a TV star? And
yes, I remember the advert. It was a McDonald's advert. But anyway, okay, we're going to talk a bit more about that, about Xavi Simons and the Slavia Prague game just after a word from my sponsors. Get yourself to okjersey.com where you can buy the best football shirts around, including this one I'm wearing now, and of course, the absolutely magnificent Black Spurs away shirt. And as if that wasn't enough, if you go onto their website and like the look of one of the shirts there, choose your size, pick the Champions League badge for the sleeve as well if you're that way inclined, then go to checkout and type the code BARN into the coupon section. That's BARN as in short for Barnaby. And when you do, you'll get a whopping 8% off your purchase. Now, I'm no mathematician, but 8% means if you've spent, say, and let's face it, I'm being optimistic here, 100 quid, then you get £8 off, not to be sniffed at. Get yourself to okjersey.com to pick one up, or if you're too lazy to type in the website, just scan the QR code that's on the left of me throughout this video. Enjoy. Okay, so I haven't done a video since the Tottenham 3 Slavia Prague 0 game. It was such an enjoyable game, really high tempo, really entertaining. Thomas Frank said this about Xavi Simons' performance afterwards. He said, I think he built on the good game on Saturday, produced again, I would say. Good link-up play, nice turns in the middle of the pitch where he also got that acceleration to go past the player and open up the spaces. I also like his work ethic. For example, there was a great recovery run in the 90-plus minutes where he just got all the way back, which is crucial for me, for us, for everyone to work very hard. So I liked his overall performance. His stats were 1 goal, 37 of 44 passes completed, 6 passes into the final third, 2 of 4 long balls completed, 1 ball recovery, and 3 fouls won. I feel like a lot of people have mainly been talking about Simons, but George, tell me about your overall thoughts on the game, on the win, and how it stands us in good stead, I think, in the Champions League.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, if you remember, I predicted 3-0 on our last.
I didn't remember, but well done for pointing that out. Are you a betting man, George? You should be.
No, I famously, like amongst like my mates, once put on a really significant bet. It's the only big bet I've put on in my life, which was on Mourinho's Inter team winning the Champions League from that semi-final stage when the only pathway was to beat Barca in the semi and Barca in the semi and this final, and I won a lot of money there. Other than that, I've never put on a serious bet in my life. But anyway, 3-0 in that game. To be honest, I didn't think that was hugely difficult to call because Spurs are building some momentum first. Second, our European home record is actually a very formidable one, and it has been for years. Yeah. We've lost a couple of home games in Europe in the last decade. Like it's a formidable home record. And it was just one of those that I felt if we score reasonably early in this game, things will unfold. I've read comments and I've heard things to the effect of 2 penalties and an own goal. What does that prove? And I'm just like, look, guys, we need to stop leaning on like this sort of top line statistics. It's becoming a bit of a headache for me now. It started a little bit with the Newcastle match where we were far from perfect in that game, but everybody kept referring to this no shots on target thing in the first 30 minutes, which soon became Chinese whispers, and no shots on target in the first 30 minutes became no shots in the first hour. Like, this on target.
I think I might have been guilty of that, but to be honest, at that point, it was reminding me of Nuno Ball, so I was quite annoyed.
No doubt, but I just think a lot's read into certain statistics.
Sure.
The shot on target one is a real pet hate of mine. I think Joe Linton in that game had their best effort, which hits the inside of the post and goes out. That's considered a shot off target. Now,
really?
Yeah. Anything
Oh
that hits
God.
the post or the bar is off target.
I think the thing about that, I'm glad you brought it up actually. The thing about on target and off target that winds me up is that if a shot is blocked by a
yeah,
defender, that's not counted as on target. That's mad.
exactly. Blocked like on the line
Yeah.
is considered off target.
That's
So
wild.
I don't pay too much mind to all this stuff. I'm much more about the eye test. What am I seeing? How does that affect my understanding of the game and where the team is at? Yeah. And I just feel like that game the other night, if you take away those top line stats, it was clear that that represented significant progress on some of the more recent performances, right? It was fluid, there was shape, players expressed themselves on the ball. There was a willingness as a collective to stay tight off the ball. And that team was, they were bold. They came to Spurs quite front foot, high press.
Yeah.
There was no obvious reason why we should have kept the clean sheet based on their approach to the game. Just good defending collectively, individually, everybody, as Frank would say, winning their duels. And I was impressed with that performance. If you look back at our wins, every single one of them has been discredited on some level based on the perceived caliber of the opposition or the nature of the goals that we scored, the timing of the goals that we scored. I just think we need to just bring it down to room temperature for a second. Like, what does represent a kind of unconditionally successful game? So this Nottingham Forest game coming up, if we win it marginally, is that a bad thing? Are they a ground that you go to and expect to win by 2 or 3 and dominate the match? No, right? If we draw the game, is that a disgrace? Is that something that brings us down several pegs off the back of the 2 wins in the last week? I don't think so. I think a draw against them. You tell Arsenal how they feel about a draw against Aston Villa now. They'd feel pretty good about a draw against Aston Villa now.
Yeah, they would.
You can on your bad days. I just think we've really got to recalibrate our expectations from game to game as well as across the season.
Yeah.
And to me, that was an impressive result the other day,
It was. I talked a little bed in my post-match about seeing, or almost finally seeing some of these layers that Thomas Frank is talking about. You mentioned the fluidity. That was definitely one part of it, but also seeing Jed Spence crop up in an inverted fullback role. What did you think of Jed's performance?
Jed's been really, really consistent in the last sort of month. I think he got a bit too carried away with his whole kind of social media persona of, give me your best winger stuff. It was fun, but
the penitentiary.
Penitentiary stuff. It just got a little bit to his head enough that he's priding himself so much on being that one-on-one defensive stopper that his attacking game just went to pieces. Like, I didn't see it. Now I'm seeing him get into that final third with greater regularity. I think it's a matter of time before he scores. He's had a few one-on-one type situations recently where he hasn't been as sharp as he could be in front of goal. He's a goal threat. We've seen that in his previous seasons for Spurs. He'll start contributing something in the attacking third, goals and assists. It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, and so do you think the reason why we saw him pop up in those kind of little pockets, inverted, kind of almost sometimes in the 10 role, almost Ange Ball-esque, was because we were playing, specifically Thomas Frank had made that tweak because we were playing against a team who went man-to-man all over the pitch. And realistically, at the weekend, we won't see that.
Exactly that. Man-to-man all over the field and just a very intense press and a physical side. I think you kind of needed the fullbacks inside just to thicken us up in the central part of the pitch because they were a tough assignment. We talked about this being a Morgan Gibbs-White derby. It's also a bit of a Jed Spence derby, isn't it? He had his time there. He also got sent off there last season. People forget that because it was one of many forgettable league matches last season under Ange. We lost 1-0 there. Spence was sent off in injury time.
Right.
We were absolutely fucking woeful in that match. And it was
Elanga scored the winner, didn't he, on the just running through the middle, I remember.
Running through the middle. And you know what? When people say our season was generally bad and then it nosedived after it looked like we could win a competition, that game was around this time last year. It was Boxing Day. It was early. Solanke played that game. Kulishevsky played that game. Bentancur played that game. Brennan Johnson was there. It was pretty full, that team. I think we were really weak in the centre backs. Radu and Gray played centre backs. And just a reminder to Spurs fans that we've had to endure some really, really turgid stuff for the last year. The idea that this kind of false binary that's been created of you've got the Ange ball and you got this. No. This, as in this is worst, was what Ange was doing last season.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. Okay, let's talk more about Sunday then. It's a Sunday 2:00. I've been talking all week about being relatively excited because Forest had their Europa League game, so we have 2 days more, fitness behind us, less fatigue. But actually, I looked last night and Forest rested quite a few players. And it was a 5:00 game, 5:30 game, so they've got a bit longer. How are you feeling? What do you think? What do you think is likely to happen in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I did suspect they'd rotate. Utrecht away is a game that they can compete in with whatever 11 they put out. But for me, the Thursday Sunday thing is less to do with what's in the legs, because it's much the same as Wednesday, Saturday. It's the same thing. It's something to do with your cycle of preparation as a club, the days you would usually consider training days, rest days. It just messes with that. It's more what it does for the collective club, the manager's routine, the coaches, when you train, when you don't train. We used to have this issue. You remember Pochettino's first couple of seasons when we were not in the Champions League? That it was like a Lamella team, wasn't it? It was our Europa League team. It was the kind of the second unit led by Lamella scoring
the Rabona Europa League.
That was what we had going on there. And on those weeks where it didn't matter whether we rotated heavily or not, we always had a bit of an issue at the weekend. It was always difficult to get back into a certain swing at the weekend, specifically in Pochettino's first season, but also for parts of his second one. So I do think that they're going to have some issues with it regardless. But more to the point, this will be a very revealing game of where we're at, because Forest in the midfield especially are still very strong. We would take Elliot Anderson.
Yes, we would,
and we would take Morgan Gibbs-White. And they're strong in the position that we're still trying to find our identity. I've read a lot of very positive things said about Archie Gray in the last week, 2 weeks, but it's ever so slightly starting to concern me, because it's getting into last season again, where I felt he did well, but was getting praised a little bit beyond what I was seeing. It's just a bit much now, and he's got a big challenge.
Is it simply because we've been as a fan base, so disappointed with what we've seen in our midfield? The fact that he's actually making some decent decisions and playing some passes forward is exciting us more than it should do.
Yeah, but I would argue, is he playing more passes forward than Bergvall was playing against West Ham earlier in the season?
No, true.
Well, probably not. There is something about a young British player that gets English supporters a bit giddy, and they get a bit drunk. And before you know it, I'm being told that blue is green. And, I've seen it happen over the years with British talent like Connor Wickham, where the guy had barely scored a goal, and I was led to believe that he was definitely going to be England's starting striker for the next however many years.
Yeah.
It happened with Tyler Dibbling, who Everton have paid.
He hasn't got on the pitch.
He's not on the pitch. And Spurs were in that conversation.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't do it.
Well, because he'd also already had a move from Southampton to Chelsea and been homesick and moved back. So it's probably the same thing happening again, you would have thought.
So I'm not saying Gray's that. Gray's far from that. And Gray is definitely playing well right now. But people are talking about Gray as if he's playing like Elliot Anderson. He's not. No. What he's doing is he's plugging a gap for us, where I still feel that Ruben Neves signing needs to be made.
But he's probably about 4 or 5 years younger than Elliot Anderson, at least, isn't he? I mean, I think what Gray's showing me that I really like, just to play devil's advocate a bit, is he's really showing me his football brain at the moment. And that's where I would put him a tiny bit, and only a tiny bit ahead of Lucas Bergvall. I think Bergvall does offer a bit more of a threat goal scoring wise, but I think football brain wise, in terms of seeing Archie Gray when to make runs, when to put his foot on the ball, when to play it easy, when to take a risk, is just showing me a tiny bit more.
That's probably a fair assessment, in that I've read that he's a better passer than Lucas Bergvall. He's not a better passer, but he might be a more sensible passer. He might know when to give it up to players who can do more with it. And positionally, he's definitely more disciplined. So yeah, I'm interested. If he plays this weekend, I'm really interested to see how he gets on against guys who are a bit further on. Yeah. And I do want Spurs fans to bear that in mind. Maybe one of the reasons why I'm so wary of this Archie Gray stuff is almost to protect him a little bit, because sooner or later, I think he's going to get destroyed by somebody who is way ahead of him. And I know how our supporters respond in those situations. Yeah. We're writing checks that he has to cash. And I'm not comfortable with that.
So slight elephant in the room then. Are you slightly suggesting you fear or think that maybe away at Forest, Thomas Frank maybe go back to the unspoken Palhinha-Bentancur double axis?
He really doesn't need to be looking at that. I mean, the solution is always, for me now, we talked about this last call.
Does Frank think that, I guess, is my question.
I really hope he doesn't. I really hope he sees the last 2 weeks as the progression that I've seen and you've seen, and recognizes that it has to be Gray or Bergvall or Sarr next to Palhinha or Bentancur. Yeah. It just has to be like that. Anything other than that, we really struggle to progress the play. You know, we're not able to get that ball up the field in a kind of cohesive, fluid way.
Yeah, speaking about that, Palhinha has come out and had a dig at Jamie Carragher. He's seen Mo Salah's dig at Jamie Carragher. He's like, I'll have a bit of that. He said, he said, some people need to speak about others to be on the TV. It makes it a bit embarrassing seeing sometimes the ex-players speaking that way. They speak and they look sometimes like superstars on their past. I don't have problems to say. I think he should have seen probably more games of me at Tottenham. I think I'm having a top season.
Oh, wow. Well, what Palhinha, he shouldn't have wasted his time with all those words. He should have said, I'm having the goal-scoring season of my life, but it's only on par with how many goals Jamie Carragher scored for Spurs. Yeah, that's what he should have dropped the mic on Jamie Carragher's incredible goal-scoring record for a team he never played for.
Absolutely. And okay, so just the final thing on Sunday's game. Do you think, I think the big question is, do you think he's going to play Xavi Simons? And give me a prediction, George, as well.
I think he's going to play Xavi Simons. He has to. We talked, didn't we, about how all that rotation for Xavi actually could work in our favor, in that his legs are fresher than most in this period. Definitely a confidence player. Most attacking, creative players are confidence players. He has 2 goals in his last 2 games. He has created chances. He's looked a threat. He has to play. Simple. What are we going to do in this game? I feel like it's one of those that the margin is really small between us winning by 1, us losing by 1, or it being a draw. I'm going to be confident enough to rule out the losing by 1.
Okay.
I'm sitting somewhere between us winning by 1 and it being a draw.
Right.
I think the starting 11 is going to really decide that for me. Both starting 11s will decide that. It'll be that narrow. We'll either be 1-1 or 1-0 Spurs, that kind of thing.
George is going for 1-0 Spurs or 1-1. I think it might be a draw as well. Let us know what you think in the comments. George, let the audience know where they can find your stuff again.
GeorgeNelsonPhotography.com, and on the Instagram page, I've actually been getting quite a lot of messages on the Instagram portal from Spurs people who are like, I love jazz, I love photography, I love Spurs. Where did you come from? I've always been here, man. Always been here.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Make sure you go and follow George's Instagram page and speak to him about jazz. He loves that. But most importantly, guys, we've got a big game on Sunday. Let's get behind the club. Give this video a like. Do press the subscribe button for daily Tottenham news, and enjoy your weekend. Come on, you Spurs. Get yourself to okjersey.com, where you can buy the best football shirts around, including this one I'm wearing now, and of course the absolutely magnificent black Spurs away shirt. And as if that wasn't enough, if you go onto their website and like the look of one of the shirts there, choose your size, pick the Champions League badge for the sleeve as well if you're that way inclined, then go to checkout and type the code BARN into the coupon section. That's BARN as in short for Barnaby. And when you do, you'll get a whopping 8% off your purchase. Now, I'm no mathematician, but 8% means if you've spent, say, and let's face it, I'm being optimistic here, 100 quid, then you get £8 off, not to be sniffed at. Get yourself to okjersey.com to pick one up, or if you're too lazy to type in the website, just scan the QR code that's on the left of me throughout this video.